I can
Thank
send you
you.
this later if you want it.
No, it's all good.
It's the yearly totals for zoning.
Sweet.
The zoning committee's totals for last year?
Scroll that.
Sorry, Maggie. Just sit down.
This one looks more.
Hey, how are you?
Everybody that got in early before I got organized, if you want to start in case you need credit for 3 meetings, if you want to run for the board next year, you have to have your record.
Yeah, the key, that's what keystone is. I think that.
This corner right here.
Got it?
You go to the treasury, you erase the.
Do you folks know Jacob?
She should have it right.
They just stopped doing that. They're operating.
Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. You can still sign in. Just want to get going. It's a long meeting. Couple rules of order. We are on Zoom. Hi, Zoom people. I'm going to try my best to monitor you, but if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. The volume's not on. We are on Zoom, so everyone can hear anything that you say. Your faces aren't on there. I have it directed this way, but for our presenters, just unfortunately, your face will be on there if you feel some kind of way about that. We have DRWC here, and they're going to go first. And then we have Otis here today to talk about the bikeways, and they'll go last. And then after both of these organizations present, then we'll have time for questions and comments. Depending on how much engagement there is, we're going to limit folks to about a minute. I'm going to have my phone on a timer. You'll hear a noise, and then you want to wrap up a little bit shortly after that. We will also ask that our presenters keep their answers succinct to about a minute or two. I think that's it. Board members, am I forgetting anything? Yes, Mark.
Just want to let everybody know I am FNA's communications lead. I promise I am not some weird rando. So if you see me, I'm getting video and pictures of the evening. If you do not want to be on camera, just let me know. You can find me. I know exactly. Just let me know, like, hey, Marta, no thanks. And I got you.
Yeah.
Just want to let you know who I was.
And for everyone on Zoom, any questions that you have, please put them in the chat. Again, we can't hear you on my crappy Mac. So I'll just go really quick. We had elections in November, so I just want to introduce some of the new board members before we get going. We have Brittany Coleman, who, if you're here, please raise your hand.
Oh, I see some of my actual neighbors.
Yes.
Neighbors.
Brittany joined us. She's the new events chair. We also have Allie Hamzik, which she's here somewhere. Oh, there she is. There's also Michelle Claffey, who's back there. And then we have returning members. John Scott is over here. John is the safety chair. And then we have Jerry. Oh, Jerry's not here. We have Jerry Grupp, and I'm sure most people know who Jerry is. Jerry will be joining Bob in zoning matters. Then there's the rest of us. I'm Ashley. I'm the new president. There's Bob. He's the zoning and secretary. There's Emily. She's our volunteer coordinator. Any mutual aid things? There's been a lot I've seen in Fishtown is awesome. Unfortunately, please reach out to me and Emily. We do have some mutual aid programs, and we're trying to expand them. We have Maggie, who's still the outreach chair, and I don't think I'm missing any. Oh, Jen Gal, who's not here, as well as Mike Van Dorn, and obviously Olivia. Thanks, Maggie. All right, we're gonna go with the RWC.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Lizzie Woods. I'm a Senior Vice President at the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation. For those of you not familiar with DRWC, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that works on behalf of the city to revitalize the Central Delaware waterfront. Our sort of planning jurisdiction is between Oregon and Allegheny, between I-95 and the river. We're the organization responsible for things like Spruce Street Harbor Park, Cherry Street Pier, the Delaware River Trail, and the new Penn's Landing Cap and Park project, among other things. What we're here today to talk to you about is a very small but very important segment of the Delaware River Trail. Currently the trail, this is the vision for the trail in the 2012 master plan. We're here to talk about a tiny segment that will go in Penn Treaty Park to connect the trail as it exists today to the battery. So that's all I'm going to say, but I'm going to introduce the team. So we have Karen Thompson.
Sure, Karen Thompson. I'm the Director of Planning Policy and Engagement.
And Katie Fitzstick.
Hello, I'm Katie Fishtown. I'm a project manager at DRWC. I'm sorry if I'm in the way, but I'm going to direct this.
And then Matt Ludwig is here from our engineering firm, NV5. So with that, Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, so Lizzie set us up with kind of like our jurisdiction and what are we going to be talking about today that pertains to Fishtown. So she said we're at Penn Treaty Park, and it's that little connection between Penn Treaty Park and the battery. As many of you guys, go to the park, you'll notice that like there's a disconnect on the trail at that park. And as you zoom in further, this is a plan that Matt and NV5 did in 2023. It zooms in closer to see like where they would like to conceptually align that trail back in 2023. The battery in 2023-2024 completed a part of the trail behind there. If you guys have seen it, it's like a nice asphalt trail that goes past, and then there's some like concrete, powdered concrete that kind of like gives you like pedestrian pathways, and it goes underneath the arches back there. So we'd like to connect the Penn Treaty Park Trail to this battery trail. And then just to go over some site constraints so you're aware of like why we're doing what we're doing. There's a large London plane tree, and we'd like to protect that at all costs, as much as we can. There's a high-use pedestrian and bicycle trail confluence that happens right in that tree. There's a slight change in elevation, about 2.8 feet when the lawn meets that concrete wall. There's a historic battery fence, which we need to preserve the integrity of. I mean, not the integrity of the iron and the look of history, but the wall is crumbling, so we'll try to fix that. And then also, since there's a recently built battery trail, we wanted the landscape to like be fluid with that design. So some site solutions are to be careful around the construction at the demo and then the construction of the trail around the tree. So air speeding around tree roots and tree protection fencing during construction. And because of this tree and because of the elevation difference, we're doing elevated boardwalk with low impact pier structure. So making sure that we're not impacting the tree. And also, since it's in a floodplain, making sure that the boardwalk is elevated, so like when it floods, it will go underneath and not impact that trail. Sorry. So this is a rendering that NV5 recently did to kind of show what we're thinking about here. So it's showing that boardwalk, the permanent track boardwalk. And then we have, because we've heard a lot of complaints about cyclists coming here in this way, pedestrians trying to access this fishing pier, really trying to draw attention to the change in use, this intersection here, so having a textured colored concrete. And then also we're going to add rumble strips here and here so that people are warned when that they're going to be crossing the intersection of pedestrians and cyclists. There's going to be some plantings added here, and then trying to like smoothly flow this into the battery's existing landscape they built. Do you want to go? So now we're going to go. We'll just continue, and we'll have questions at the end. Here's a boardwalk profile view, so like cutting through the middle of that boardwalk, we have just like how it slowly slopes up. And it's pretty small, so we're not too worried about, things getting up, like people living kind of there, people crawling around in there, but just, it's a very subtle elevation change. But we need it to make that wall. And also so that water can kind of flow between, you're not impacting the floodplain. And then this is a cross section of that trail, just looking at how it's going to meet the existing site. I don't know, Matt, if you want to add anything to these.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'll elaborate on is this cross section that you're looking at is if you're standing in the park and you're looking towards the battery, And this is that London plane tree that Katie pointed out earlier. So the boardwalk is just getting started. You can see it's not really raised up above the ground at this point. But as it gets closer to the battery, it has a very, very gentle slope. You won't even really feel it as it comes up to meet that grade at the battery. Again, the biggest reasons for that are the chronic flooding that we see with the river and flooding this area. Because of the trees located in this area, it's hard to drain that out without negatively impacting those trees. So this is the best long-term solution in order to make sure that we're not harming the roots in this area and making up for that grade in a gentle manner to get into the battery.
We'll have some material pictures. This is examples of the permit track. If you want to speak to any of those.
Yeah, so these what we're using, this boardwalk that we're specifying it's a proprietary product called Verbatim. Go on their website and check things out, but here's some really good examples of what it would look like. It's a precast concrete boardwalk. So these panels will come in by truck, the contractor will place them in. But these give some really good examples of how they're very carefully placed around trees. The look that you see in this picture and this picture is what this boardwalk will probably look like in Petrie Park. It will have this low profile rub rail on it. This example does show railings on here. Because of the low profile nature of this boardwalk, we're probably not looking at railings for this particular boardwalk. It will be, the distance in here will be 14 feet wide from the inside of the rub rail to the inside. The overall will be about 15.25 feet. So it's sufficiently wide for the multi-use bicycle and pedestrian traffic that you see on the Delaware River Trail. This is a close-up of what the planks look like. We're looking at potentially specifying like a wood grain finish on the boardwalk, so it'll give it a different little finish to it. And this is just another zoomed up view. It's really hard for you to see in this, but the wood grain is in the picture. I know most of you probably can't see that, but it's just another close-up view of what that boardwalk will look like. And as Katie said, at that node where the boardwalk lands, where the path leads down to the fishing pier, and then the path leads up north towards Beach Street, where those intersect, there's a node there right now. It's paved in asphalt. That's going to get torn out due to the construction of the boardwalk, but when we replace that, we're looking at possibly using some kind of textured concrete there. It'll help get the attention of the cyclists who are going through there. If you go back behind the Rivers Casino portion of the trail, there's some stamped concrete back there as well. So you might be familiar with that, but this will help amplify that, send a signal to everybody using the trail. Hey, this is a special place. This is where people come together. It's if you think about where the pavers are in front of the seat wall, that is doing a similar thing. It's sending the signal to folks that this is a special place and cyclists should be slowing down.
That's it for, we will save questions to the very end.
We did want to make one other quick announcement, unrelated to this trail project, but probably of great interest to Fishtown neighbors. Some of you may know, but many of you may not know, that the area under I-95 between Columbia Avenue and Ann Street is the subject of a joint use lease agreement between PennDOT and the city. And then the city is planning to take that land and lease it to DRWC for long-term operations and maintenance. We have not yet executed that agreement, but we are in the process of doing so and expect to do so in the near future. And in anticipation of that, we're holding 2 public meetings in February to talk about security, maintenance, parking, and programming under that space. So we just have some flyers here for people interested in that.
We'll try to share that if you can.
Oh yeah, the flyers will be sending around. And
I did not print off.
It's totally confirmed today. We just thought we'd give that announcement.
No worries. I just wanted to say, because it's really a really packed room, and I know some people have kids. We are recorded, so if you had to run out or whatever, we will be sending this out to everyone from our newsletter and posting on our website. Okay. And now we'll hear from Otis of the neighborhood bikeways.
Patience, 1 minute. See everything I'm doing very quickly. Hello, my name is Jeanette Bruger. I'm the bicycle and pedestrian coordinator at the Office of Multimodal Planning at Otis. Thanks so much everybody for coming. We are here to talk to you about Fishtown neighborhood bikeways. And first I want to introduce the team. Jake, can you introduce yourself?
Jacob Elliott, Vision Zero coordinator with Otis.
Lydia?
Lydia Kessler, Complete Street District Manager with Otis.
Hey, Adam Smith, I'm another district manager with Otis.
Thank you. So I know there are a lot of people who might have a lot of very specific questions, and we're happy to stay and answer questions, but I know there's other stuff to talk about at the meeting too. We did bring some rollouts that we can look at together and talk and write comments, and we're happy to stay and do that after the presentation, okay? But I'll go through some slides first so you know the general gist of it, okay? What is a neighborhood bikeway, and why are we here to talk to you tonight? One reason we're here to talk to you is not because there is a huge project coming or a huge impact per se, but there are a lot of little things that go into a neighborhood bikeway. And you'll see the project schedule in a minute and some reminders about when we've talked to you in the past, but the little things that really add up that we're planning around 2 of the routes are raised crosswalks and traffic diverters and a couple of sections of contraflow bike lanes. And when you think about the term neighborhood bikeway, we haven't really done this in Philly before. They have these in lots of other places. They might call them bike boulevards or greenways, things like that. But all of our streets in Philadelphia aren't big enough to fit bike lanes. So what do we do on the sections we still want to bike on and connect along to feel safe and to be safer? So the idea is to add some of these features along certain routes to connect the most desirable bikeable spaces. So we went through an exercise with you folks, or many of you I recognize, but a lot of other people over the past 2 years to pick the routes. And we picked the routes in pink, and you'll hear why and what in just a second. Next slide, please. So, over the past 2 years, we did a lot of public engagement, and we did network prioritization, which is a fancy way to say that we worked with folks to pick which roads should be first, and which roads should be connected as a neighborhood bikeway before the others. And right now, we're starting design of the priority streets that you saw in pink. We were able to get some funding from Indigo and some funding from the city to do final design documents, which means when we get construction documents, we'll be able to construction funding, we'll be able to hand it to someone and they can build it. So that's the goal, is to finish these final design documents to get to that next step. So after we gather our feedback today, we'll say to the designers, go for it and make these final design documents. We'll come back to you near the end of the process or further along in the process to say this is approximately what these things are gonna look like. And then we'll keep looking for funding. So that's our process. Next step, next slide. All right, so like I said before, we already talked to a lot of people. We had meetings and bike rides, and some of you were there. We had an online survey. We had more than 900 responses, which was really cool. And we asked folks to prioritize the streets that were put out for potential neighborhood bikeways. And the things we talked about were connection points, where people bike already, how people felt safe on the street or wanted safety improvements on the street. Also things like, does the end of it go right to the project that the folks talked about before at Penn Treaty Park? That's one of the real goals of one of our corridors. And then the other end is at a rec center and goes by a school and places people want to bike. So we asked folks to pick their priority streets. We got a lot of answers that really matched with what we thought they were going to say. But it was nice to hear the prioritization from the neighbors. Next slide, please. So where are the pink lines going now? Where are we starting? The first route is Columbia Avenue, all the way from Frankfurt to Penn Treaty Park. And we're going to talk in a second and zoom in on the treatments that are going to make it a neighborhood bikeway. But that's the first route. The second route is also a little bit on Columbia, and then after 95, it zigzags over to Palmer. And we'll talk about those details in just a second. One click, there should be an animation. So, you folks know this neighborhood better than I do, but I finally understand how to get around Fishtown after these projects. I still get lost a little bit, but wow, it's really complicated. That said, this little wiggle, which we'll talk a little bit more about in detail, is at Frankfurt. We're going up Palmer, or away from the river, connecting to Front, and we had some really good ideas earlier this week to include a path over to Schisler Rec as well, because that's already there. And then this is where Columbia starts at Frankfurt and goes away from Frankfurt. So hopefully you're kind of seeing how the routes kind of fit together. Next slide. And then all the way down there at Penn Treaty Park, and this is where that boardwalk, which is why these two green lines aren't connected, this is where that boardwalk is right there. They'll be connected soon. But right here, the idea is to come from the park on Columbia, and you'll see a zoom in a second of how we're going to do that, but come from the park, and then after you go under 95, wiggle over Salmon, Earl, Wilde, Palmer, and then Palmer all the way to Frankfurt. So it's complicated, but you folks understand complicated streets because you live here. So next slide, please. Here's what some of the treatments are that we're going to propose, and you'll see a big map with treatments in a second. We are going to be talking about painted curb extensions, and this is a slow zone, and you kind of can see a painted area ringed with flex posts here, and then your shack and accent area over there with painted curb extensions as well. Next slide. And concrete curb extensions and raised crosswalks. So those are three of the major elements that we're proposing to kind of blanket the area, and you'll see exactly where we're proposing in a minute. But the benefit of these are higher visibility for pedestrians, right? People walking can be seen more by people driving with these elements. It also slows down drivers, right? Theoretically, I saw you giggle, it's okay to giggle. Hopefully as you're going over a raised crosswalk, if you don't slow down the first time, you'll slow down the second time, right? And the idea is to have that kind of raised crosswalks at places like Girard and Palmer, so that when you're turning off of Girard, you have to slow down to go into the neighborhood, right? And similarly for Girard and Columbia, when you're going the other way. And then concrete bump outs kind of speak for themselves, right? You can't park a car there, hopefully, if there's concrete there. Next slide. So, I'm zooming in just a little more to show what Palmer and Frankfurt look like. And we have a printout of this, and we're going to ask you to write a lot of comments on it if you feel so inclined. But the idea is that this is one of those spots where there's something special going on that's not just speed tables and painted bump outs, okay? This is the spot on Palmer between Sepviva and Frankfurt where Palmer gets really wide, and it's only one block, or I'm sorry, it's only one driving lane, and yet it feels like more. And when you're a driver, you feel like perhaps I can scoot around that ambulance that is stopped. That's not what you're supposed to be doing, right? And we want to right size the roadway for what actions we want to expect, right? So what we'd like to do depends on a couple things. So it depends on being able to consider a block-long loading zone along the curb for ambulance, CCT, and other Newman Medical Center needs, because I heard loud and clear from the board that that's something that's needed on that block, right? And we have to look at the traffic demands here to make sure this works. We're fairly sure it's gonna work, but it's gonna be different, right? Because right now, people have that extra space to go around, and that's not gonna work in the future. There's not gonna be that space. So what we're proposing here is a contraflow parking separated bike lane for this block. That gets you from Frankfurt down Palmer, along the park, right on Sepviva, and then south on Columbia. It'll be a little more clear when you see the bigger map how that's gonna work. Next slide, please. This is kind of what that looks like today, if you need a kind of jog on your memory. And then it kind of fits in. Oh, I also wanted to show this bigger map, and we have a printout of this bigger map as well. So we just looked at this spot in detail, and we're also going to show this spot in detail. Okay? But this, before you move on from this, this is the bigger map that kind of shows how we're blanketing these routes with these treatments. And it's probably hard to see from way back there, which is why we have the printouts, okay? And we can also send this out to everybody who signed in, okay? But the purple X's are speed tables along, again, Columbia, then Columbia back again, Salmon, Earl, Wilde, Palmer, okay? So you got speed tables, you have raised crosswalks, particularly at the entrance into those roadways from major arterials. So at Girard and Palmer, at Columbia and Palmer, and at Frankfurt and Columbia up there. And then you have two spots where you have special treatments, because either there's room for it or it's a unique situation. So again, you have that parking separated contraflow bike lane on this 2-wide block. And then at this spot, you can put the next slide. What we're proposing is a little unique, right? So let's start at the intersection of Delaware and Columbia, where I heard from a lot of folks that it's really scary to walk across, right? And when I was biking there with the Adair Bike to School kids, I was really scared. Not as much for myself, but for all the kids that we were with. Because you're going across a really wide Delaware Avenue, right? And one of the things we're proposing, well, I guess 2 or 3 of the things we're proposing are, so if the park is over here, okay, and the entrance of the bike back and forth to the park is either at this curb cut or at this little bike ramp. And then there's this little section of Columbia that is shared by all users. And the idea is if you're going this way on Columbia, you just use that little stretch. But if you're going the other way, you're going to notice these little hashed areas. And again, I know it's too small for a lot of you to see. We will have these printouts that you can look at in more detail. But these little gray areas are new sections of concrete. And actually, if you click, you might, this is what it looks like on the south side. This is called a nose or something. It's called a concrete something. And it's supposed to, a bull nose, thank you. It's supposed to act like a feature that, you know, if a driver is taking that turn too quickly, they can't get into that section of driveway, or I'm sorry, a crosswalk. We want to put that on both sides of this crosswalk over here to make you feel and actually be a little bit safer as you're crossing, both as someone who's walking your dogs or walking by yourself or biking along this intersection, okay? So that's what these little gray things are. The idea that also is that not just people walking across the crosswalk will use this, but people biking this direction towards the neighborhood will use it. And then also, people biking this direction will get up onto this sidewalk because it is wide enough for one direction of bike traffic. We had to choose between trees, parking spaces, or sharing the sidewalk. Which one sounds easier? Sharing the sidewalk, right? We didn't want to assume that we could take parking spaces or take down trees, right? So we're starting with sharing the sidewalk. And if you could click the next button, that's this section right here. It looks a little narrow to be shared by one direction of bikers and people walking. What we'd like to do is to fill in with concrete between the trees, so that if folks need to pass, or if the bikers need to pull over while somebody walking their dog needs to pass, that they can do that. Okay, so that's the proposal. Next slide, please. And all of those things basically kind of go into this plan. Next, please. Our next steps are to gather feedback tonight, and then finalize any changes needed to this concept, and whether they're curbside regulations at a new loading zone at the Newman Medical Center, or any other big ideas we hear from tonight. And then we want to tell the consultant, please finish your plans so we can look for construction money and build it. So that's our goal. Next slide, please. And we want to know what you think, but first we want to follow the direction of whomever is running the show, and Ashley, and whether we do it by Q&A or lay down things, up to you.
Yeah, I think let's do Q&A and then we can lay down. I think that's great.
Great.
Any questions first for DRWC? That was about the boardwalk at Penn Tree.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Can you talk about the lighting situation down there?
Yeah, when we built the trail that exists in the park right now, we installed solar light poles, the same ones that are on the trail. The batteries in those have died, and we are in the process of replacing them. So that's why we are working on it.
It's all going to be lit.
What's that?
It's all going to be lit.
Yes.
The question was, will there be lights? And the answer is absolutely.
Or no, I should clarify. No new lights as part of this project, because it's like a tiny little section. But the lights that are in the park along the trail right now, which have not been working, are being repaired so that they will work in the park.
I would suggest you take a look at putting lights in that section because it does get quite dark in that pocket. There.
Okay, we'll look at that.
We have John.
I thought it looked wonderful that what you're doing. Once you're going to be able to walk through the battery forever and ever.
Yes.
And how far up? I've never walked up. How far up can you walk on the river?
Well, I mean, okay, so the battery, we have an easement on the property that the trail is on the battery. So right now, they have only constructed the trail between the park and basically Palmer, which is what they consider their driveway, basically. The plan is for it to continue along there. We completed last year a study for the extension of the trail from Penn Treaty Park all the way up to Lehigh Avenue, which does call for the trail to run along the river's edge for that entire length as much as possible. There are 2 property owners between the Battery and North Bank, basically, that we do not have site control for yet. So we have, in that study, proposed sort of like long-term temporary routes that would be until we're able to get that. But yes, the plan is for the trail to continue along the river's edge as far north as possible, eventually connecting to Allegheny Avenue and the trail all the way up there.
That's very nice, to finally see being able to go to our plan, which we've never, ever been able to do. The other thing, the last thing, Karen, will we ever dedicate, and this ties into the bike coming up Columbia Avenue, we have the Wolf Turtle Turkey on Columbia, we never had a dedication.
Yes.
It honors indigenous people,
That-
and it'd be nice to let people know what it is. People constantly walk by and what are these 3
Yes.
things, and it has a nice story. It turned out wonderful. We should be proud. We should do it.
I believe the last time that came up was February 2020, and I need to know why nothing happened.
Yes.
Let us restart that conversation, because PennDOT wanted to be involved, and we can certainly resurrect that, because you're right, those should absolutely.
It's a win. You guys did a great, of all the gateways you did, that's the nicest one, in my opinion. So you should be proud of it.
I've got a question behind Michelle. Yep.
The indigenous among us remember Delaware Avenue being horribly flooded with rain. So if you're going to take away that little grass piece, has some kind of an engineering study been done to guarantee the Delaware Avenue won't flood, and then when somebody's riding by, splash the bikers and the pedestrians as they're going by?
She's talking about. Oh, we're talking about the part that Otis just talked about for the bikes?
Yeah, like let's get rid of that little piece of grass and make
That's a good question. We'll table that because someone on here also had a similar question. Anyone else for DRWC? Yep.
So when you're doing construction on the intersection there, is there going to be some sort of like diversion instructions for some cyclists to just reduce the conflicts? Because there's like that parallel sidewalk that cyclists sometimes go on.
Yeah, I think we're developing our construction specifications. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but in that we will develop sort of like I don't know if it will warrant a full detour plan, but some sort of plan for how to reroute cyclists and pedestrians while that is under construction.
The cyclists sometimes take that route right now. It's like, it's where pedestrians don't expect them as much as on your actual bike.
Okay.
We have a problem with ATV and sometimes motor vehicle use of the bike trails in Pedestrian Park and any trails in Pedestrian Park. And I just wanted to ask whether removable bollards at the pinch point, that is the communication between the Battery and Penn Treaty Park, might be a consideration to narrow and make it slightly less appealing as a communication from the big parking lots over on the other side of the Battery to Penn Treaty Park.
Yeah, I think that the Friends group also raised that point, and I think we can definitely look at that.
Any other questions for DRWC about the Battery Trail? Actually, wait, I suck. I have one more. When will construction begin?
So the good news is that we have funding for this. That funding is federal, which means that we have. Wow, you guys already know So I think we're optimistic that we'll be able to start construction this year. That's our plan right now. We've got a lot of approvals we have to go through for this tiny little section, but yeah, we do have funding.
All right, so Otis questions, and I'll start with the question about the grass. Someone also asked if there was a more permeable option, so I think that's really relevant.
Good question. Yeah, so we're in concept design right now, but that is an analysis that we can look at and see what will be the impact of that. And there are other permeable options that we could consider.
Yeah, and I'm thinking if the water freezes, then we've got
Sure.
cars sliding all over into. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Dennis?
interested in what treatments, if any, are going to the parallel streets, Salmon and that little Sepviva, just on the side of Palmer Park, to encourage biking on them, more so than just their small and not very heavily traveled streets.
There will be route signage. What treatments did you have in mind?
How long you got?
We're not suggesting any treatments on those small streets. They are small and friendly, theoretically. But we're open to ideas.
I'm going to go off video so that the people on the Zoom can hear. And I'm going to pass this around. Don't look at my stuff. Any questions? Any other questions? Yes.
So I noticed there's like a big old gap in any of the actual strategies, changes, physical infrastructure between Ann's Place and Frankfurt Avenue on Palmer Street. So sort of like, what is that, 13, 14, 1500 Palmer?
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that? I know that the intersection of Memphis and Palmer is a really, really tempting intersection for people to roll at speed. So coming off the cemetery, you only have to look in one direction for vehicles, and you're kind of at that obtuse angle where you can scope it out really well. So it gets rolled at 15 miles an hour, 5 times an hour, and curb bump outs, sidewalk extensions, raised intersection would go a really, really long way right there. So
that's a really good suggestion and question. Thank you. It's my understanding that there's some existing speed cushions there, but if we need to look at that again and sprinkle a few more things in there, we can think about it.
Bus route that goes there too.
Mm-hmm.
it turns the corner right there, but not at the actual conflict spot I'm talking about. You could do something that didn't cross the bus route.
Thank you.
I saw there was someone, yeah, over here.
Yeah, I just had a thought regarding the first Wendy's good suggestion about that section of Sepviva. So if you're biking down and you're on Sepviva, you're making that left on Columbia, which is something I do very often. I've often found that people park right at the crosswalk right there, right across from the little shop. If that could be a curb extension or something to prevent people from parking there, then you're blind. People making the left off Frankfurt, and they're coming at speed on that road. So that's just one thought for his good suggestion there.
Thank you.
Over here in the bridge.
Hi, so did I understand correctly when you said that you're going through these plans and everything, and then you're gonna look for funding for these plans? Is that correct?
We don't have construction funding. We have final design funding.
Okay, and what about maintenance? Because in true Philly style, we do things and then it just goes to hell. So like, not just the bumps and everything, which can deteriorate, the painting, so what is the plan for maintenance?
Good question. That will likely be folded into the streets department maintenance, but it sounds like we need to spend a little more time thinking about that. Thank you.
Ooh, going around. Keep on Zoom, I'm sorry, I'm giving up Zoom.
Okay, so I have a question if there will be any signage not only for drivers, but for bicyclists, because I live on Palmer Street, and I'm gonna tell you, every time, coming right at Palmer and Thompson Street, people run that, bicyclers, run it all the time, and I'm always going, oh my God, somebody's gonna get hit, because you don't stop for the stop sign either, just like the cars don't sometimes up there on Memphis Street. So it's something that would help to remind bikers that they need to do this as well, because it's really frightening sometimes that what happens, especially there, since it's going to be on Palmer. And that's such a busy street now.
Yeah.
Since they changed over the routing, I personally think it'd be better to make it on another street, because Palmer is now the main way that everything coming off of 95 comes up into the neighborhood. That wasn't true 5 years ago. It's really something that's more now, and I mean, there's a tremendous amount of traffic up there. So I think something has to be done, not only on the side of the drivers, but on the side for bicyclists too.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Sorry, yep.
I'm just, reside on Palmer, between Delaware and Drive. It's a boulevard. We've had 2 dogs killed and a kid almost hit.
That's terrible.
So take that into consideration. I'm in full agreement.
Thank you.
With them making a left onto Willoughby, onto Palmer, that's like an expressway coming up off of Delaware.
Thank you. That's really helpful to know. Sounds like we need to look a little bit more deeply into that. Thank you.
So I have a couple things that hopefully make it really quick. So the one is about just looking at the plan here and speed tables. I think it's a really smart idea. As a cyclist, my main mode of transportation, I can tell you that one of my most common experiences in Fishtown is being run down from behind by a car and being stuck on the street between parked vehicles or with no escape. I've been hit that way a couple times, been nearly hit way more than a couple times that way. Something that I found in Copenhagen that's really effective for that is, and really cost effective, is actually just little asphalt ramps that connect the street to the sidewalk. They're no more than 10 inches wide. You can park over them. People park over them in Copenhagen. Some people do drive there, believe it or not. But what it does is it gives you like a big red button escape plan out of the street. Because I mean, I know that speed tables work if they're asphalt, not if they're the plastic ones that are nailed into the ground. They do work, but there's always that fear of being chased down by a driver who really doesn't care, who's using those ramps for fun to test his new shops or whatever it is. So anyway, that's like one of my biggest fears riding a bike around the city and Fishtown in particular. Because I live here, I spend most of my time riding here. So speaking of that, there's two things I think it's great to be at the Delaware River Commission and you guys here at the same time, because so much money and time and energy was spent in building bike paths. I live on East York Street, so sorry guys. I live on the south side of East York Street. It's okay. But there's so much time and energy spent building this bike path and kind of like zany hardscape features under 95. They don't like connect to anything, right? So like I can't get to those bike paths to get to East York Street without sitting at this really dangerous light on Delaware. So just the last thing I'll say is the way I've been commuting from Center City to Fishtown is by going through the casino parking lot and cutting through Marlboro. Now Marlboro, like Palmer, is like a quadruple wide street that's one way that can easily have contraflow traffic because you only need 2 blocks, I think, and then you can make a right and cut up, and that's it. And it gets you into Fishtown a little further north too.
So Jeanette, you explained to the board why Palmer Marlboro was changed. Would you mind doing that?
Sure. We originally were considering Marlboro and Columbia, and we know that design and construction timelines never go as quickly as we want them to, even if we don't have federal funding, right? So if you think about how many things Palmer connects versus Marlboro, it's a lot more things, and it's a lot more central.
Oh, I agree with that.
to the corridor. So that's why we chose Palmer. But also, it's also a little bit what other folks have said about traffic calming needs on Palmer. And that doesn't mean there aren't traffic calming needs on Marlboro as well, but there are other benefits to just being a place that people
No, I agree. And by the way, the men's Chatham accent is that quadruple line coming off that connects to Marlboro.
Denise?
With the changes you want to do along Columbia, included in there was there to install a stop sign at Columbia and Willoughby, because that request has been denied.
That wasn't included, but that's something we can look into.
Oh, there's a lot. We're gonna have a guy betting up on the wall back there.
Sorry, I can't see very well, but where Columbia T-bones into Penn Treaty Park sucks. People go too fast below those stop signs. I can't really see the plans, but I just want to point out that it's, well, yeah, it's easier, and you are here. People don't stop at those stop signs right by skyscraper wall. It's like you would see a playground if you're not stopping at a stop sign. So, you know, I think slowing people down there at race crosswalks there would be great.
Thank you.
Just want, that was the same point I was gonna make. I go, you know, down Columbia to the park every day. That is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because the stop sign, or the light, by the time people see the yellow, by the time they get to the other side, it's already turned red and a walk sign, and they blow by it consistently. I'm not saying like once a day, I'm talking about 10 every minute. So if you're gonna have more bike paths going across Columbia into the park, really need to figure out a way to slow traffic down on Delaware Ave. The same problem Palmer has, Delaware Ave turning into Palmer is a nightmare as well.
Absolutely, and as we looked at this plan, we realized that there are issues with a lot of these intersections that we're not fixing with this project. Right? Just because we're going through them or by them doesn't mean we're fixing all the intersections, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, adding more bikes, I'm just worried that, well, we should at least try to, because if you're on a bike, you're gonna go a little bit faster than if you're walking.
Sure.
Naturally. There's a propensity to have more accidents unless we can get drivers to slow down a little bit on them. Just for the sake of, I know when I'm on a bike, I probably rode through a couple of stop signs, so it'd be helpful for me if at least the bikes or the cars kind of saw me as well.
Thank you. You ma'am, and then.
As somebody who's ridden their bike from Fishtown to 21st and Market for 20 years, bravo. But I just need help understanding something. The one lady asked about the maintenance of it, and you said it goes to the streets department. My brain hears raise taxes. Is there federal earth movement money to go into this to perpetually fund the repairs that are going to be needed? Like, since we're saving the earth with all our non-being in cars and stuff, can we get some of that?
I don't know how to answer that question, but that's something we can look into.
I know you'll think about it though.
Think about it.
I mean, we have been successful getting federal grant money for traffic calming. Like over the past few rounds, we've been pretty successful asking the federal government for grant funding to improve traffic safety on our street.
And
So that's,
maintenance.
yes, that's likely something that will continue to happen.
There's no interest in increased taxes. I mean, this is like, but I've been doing fine without it, so.
Okay. I have a question related to the, both the intersection at Delaware Ave, which increasing the time would be a huge help, and I know PennDOT is in charge of that rather than you guys. However, getting PennDOT involved at that intersection and also at Girard, I'm so excited about the raised crosswalks, but we really need them crossing Girard. If you can convince your friends at PennDOT that while we're at it, doing this raising of crosswalks, also, I mean, that's where the danger is. Sure. It's on these high-speed streets. Sure. But also, as someone who bikes along all these little streets, yes, people are on your tail all the time. What kind of signage or communication will we have about sharing the road? Because the current signs that say bicycle may take full lane does not prevent me from getting flipped off and called names all the time.
Sure. So to that point, I have a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old. They know they should share. Who is supposed to share with whom? And the term sharing the road is troublesome.
Yeah.
And so that's why we kind of shifted to may use full lane. But a sign isn't going to stop an aggressive driver who's angry and you're in their way. So the goal is to really slow down drivers so that they can't go fast, right? And maybe if they go along this corridor and they realize that every 200 feet they're gonna hit a speed table, they're gonna pick some other corridor next time. That said, I don't have the answer for what kind of sign will fix that. I do want you to keep encouraging our friends from PennDOT to do traffic calming.
And write that on all of your comments and keep saying that at these meetings.
And what is the best way to advocate for that, since it isn't you guys?
Sure.
And
So
can't
it is us.
We can't 311 that, we
Sure.
can't, or
Sure.
that's not productive.
Sure,
Anyway.
sure. So you can certainly talk to us, you can certainly continue to talk to folks at the streets department. And when you see an example of a corridor that is a PennDOT corridor that you want those treatments on Delaware Avenue, tell everyone you know, including your elected officials. And we have a special guest here tonight who might be able to say more about that.
You should continue to put your requests into the streets department. They keep, running total of all the requests, and we work with the street. I work with PennDOT. We work with the streets department to identify where to put vertical deflections and just like waste crosswalks.
Just to touch on that, I work with State Rep Isaacson. I actually try to get that light specifically changed, and we were told, no way, it's not going to happen.
They told us that 20 seconds was long enough according to traffic studies.
Because specifically they didn't want to impede the flow of traffic up and down Del Ave.
Yep.
That's at Columbia.
That's specifically at that intersection.
Yep. So ask early and often. There are ways that things used to be done, and then there are ways that things are changing slightly and for the better. So keep talking about it and say, well, I appreciate that you don't want to impede traffic, but X and Y is more important.
I will plug, while we're speaking about these high-speed corridors, that John Scott, our safety lead, will be having a meeting upcoming where he wants to talk with folks about what are your biggest priorities that he can help work on. And I know one of those that he will be offering, to get people, what should we do first? One of those is Girard Ave. So if just come to these meetings, again, you know, it's PennDOT, it's a state-owned road, it's a little bit harder of a lift for us versus dealing with the city. So, John needs all the help he can get. And nothing's ever fast with a bureaucracy, despite Shapiro's, thing to cut the red tape. So it'll be steady and long, unfortunately, advocacy. That's going to be the only way that it happens.
Yeah, I'll say for the request about the signal timing, so that actually should be, that's the city.
That is the city. That's what so I work, like I said, I work with State Rep Isaacson.
Yeah, so,
and we reached out to the city specifically told us, no, all up and down. I actually timed all the lights from Washington Ave up to Penn Tree. Every single light's 30 seconds.
Yeah. So if you have an email thread, I can give you my info for you to forward that to me, and I can follow up on it from there. And same with, I think there's a stop sign request. I can give you my info.
I'll see you afterwards.
Yeah, just loop me into those threads, and I can take from there. Because I can take that direct to the people making those calls.
We have, yep.
To follow up on this, some people who have complained about being rear-ended on their bicycles. I've been to several of these, meetings, and every time there is traffic diverters on the first slide as an example of treatments you can do. I've never seen one in the entire city. Where are you going to put them?
Yeah, so
because that's the one thing that's actually going to prevent someone from getting rear-ended on their bicycle.
Sort of. I hope it does. So we have
sort of protected bike lanes. That's the one thing that's going to actually keep us safe.
So we
Where
have
are you going to put them?
So we have 4 or 5 in the city today. We don't have any in Fishtown. And we aren't proposing any as part of this project, as part of this phase. But that's a good question. If that's something that you want to see, then write it on now.
Are traffic diverters the tiny roundabouts that you?
Traffic diverters are the idea for, so where we're putting the raised crosswalk at Palmer and Girard, another option or another idea is to put a traffic diverter there instead so that folks going through on Palmer couldn't cross Girard. And then you would have local traffic only. That would cut down on the through traffic type of drivers. So that's the idea. And if it's something that you want, that is something that meets the rules. That doesn't have anything to do with parking.
No parking.
Why would we not do that?
If it was something to say we all want.
Yeah, good question. So the question is that something that you all want, right? And I'm not gonna ask that right now, we're not gonna vote. But one of the reasons, and the reason that, you know, we look at where the traffic volumes are very high and where we don't want them to be that high, right? And we looked at the traffic volumes on Palmer, and it wasn't necessarily supported or high enough to show that we should put a diverter there. That doesn't, you know, math is, and an equation is an equation. That doesn't mean that's something that is a cutoff for an option.
I'm gonna do like 2 more questions, then we can do like 1 or 2 Zoom questions, and then we'll do the tables so that you can put all your suggestions on there.
Yeah, your plans, does it eliminate any parking, existing parking?
Good question. So there is legal parking, and then there's places where people park that is 20 feet within the crosswalk that is not technically legal, but people park there today. So when we talk about daylighting, when we talk about raised crossings, and when we talk about concrete bump outs, those will all be within 20 feet of the crosswalk where people should not be parking and where it should say no stopping anytime. Do people maybe park there today? Maybe. The answer is no, it will not take parking.
Let's talk about legal parking.
Yeah, it
None
will
of that
not
should be
take legal
eliminated.
parking spaces.
I saw one, yeah.
When was your study done about the traffic on Palmer? Because I don't believe that. I'm sorry, I live there and I just know how it has increased. And it's just, and I'm right up here, I'm in the 1200 block.
Sure.
And it is tremendous. I mean,
Yeah.
it is the main way, as you get off 95, this is how you get into Fishtown.
Yeah, that's a good question, and maybe that's something we need to revisit. If the traffic has increased recently, perhaps we need to update our counts, and also if folks who live on Palmer say this is what we want, then we will consider it very
You
strongly.
can revisit by staying over my house.
Sure.
I have a person. All right, we're gonna do John's questions, and then we're gonna do 1 or 2 Zooms. Yeah.
So Monday night, we talked about, I had a preference that the contraflow go down Frankfurt instead of Palmer, and then directly down Columbia. I did find out that Frankfurt is 60 feet wide and then Cartway is 36 feet wide, or I'm sorry, Palmer is 36 feet wide, which is the same as Frankfurt. So there is room for that lane that's being used there. If you take out that lane, instead of going down Frankfurt or along the park or something, if you take out that lane, is that going to create even more of a backup on Palmer? Is that going to make that intersection at Frankfurt and Palmer more dangerous? Because that lane is right now being used kind of as a left turn lane.
Yes.
If you take that out, that left turn is going to be, that light timing isn't so long that everybody on Palmer is going to get out in time.
That's a good question.
And there's going to be an awful lot of, running the light to make that turn.
So we had a conversation to summarize just a little bit, and there is a very wide lane on this section of Palmer that people use as 2 lanes. It is not 2 lanes. People should not be using it as 2 lanes, but one of the benefits of people using it as 2 lanes is that folks can stack at that signal, right? And so what he's talking about is, if we make it right-sized to 1 lane, will there be congestion impacts of that? And that's something we need to look at.
So I do want to make it clear though, 36 feet, it's the same width as Frankfurt, so it is legally wide enough for that second lane, even if it's not on the map. And it was widened at some point, maybe 50 years ago.
So I've never seen it striped as 2 lanes. We did some research, and we have never seen it striped as 2 lanes. Adam, do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of all there is.
Yeah.
But also I'd say,
But we did do some research, and it is not striped.
We have a lot of places that aren't striped, but that's a separate issue.
But also it's, the different, and I'm happy to definitely look into that, like 100% we'll look into it. But with Frankfurt, again, since it's a state road and has, truck traffic and all that, we can get away with narrower lanes and narrower parking spaces on Palmer than we can with Frankfurt, so we kind of lose a couple of feet with that. So that's where, and those couple of feet might make the difference, because we're talking, like a foot or 2 might make the difference about fitting or not.
Frankfurt longer, so so that the cars on Palmer have longer time to get out, so that they're not rushing through that.
Good question.
You can definitely look at the signal time.
Yeah.
There is a signal upgrade project that's coming on
That's right.
and they'll be redoing that signal.
That's right. And one would hope also that the potential for additional or different curb uses here would alleviate some of that double parking, so maybe things could be a little quicker too. But all things we need to look into.
I would like to just quickly, for the folks on Zoom, the biggest question or comment seems to be the issues with Palmer are really related to turning at that specific section, especially the left turn onto Frankfurt
Yep.
seems to be the biggest cause of traffic issues. Folks on here are saying left turn lane, right turn lane. I'm gonna tell you, I don't think that the city's thinking about that, but what are the solutions for the turning issue? Could there be a no left turning onto Frankfurt, or?
So I think we already kind of hinted at some of them, which was looking at the signal timing and whether, and what that might look like with the signal upgrade project. And other than that, we have to look more closely into it and come back to you.
Wait, can we clarify, do you know if their concern was like, they're concerned about the left turn because they're backing up in a queue, or they're concerned about the left turn because they're trying to cross the street and there's people turning?
I think it's
Right,
both,
two
as
different
someone who
issues.
lives here.
Yeah.
But it really is, it's also that's really what backs up the traffic on Palmer. Is
Drivers
people
waiting to turn left.
waiting to turn left onto Frankfurt Ave.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we're going to, if you have any more questions, please email them to us / Jeanette put her email on the last slide. I'm sure she'll answer you directly. We'll also happy to be a conduit if you forget it or you want us to just send it to her. We're gonna ask for these slides from everyone, DRWC2, and send them out to everyone, put them on the website. This Zoom was recorded. We're going to also put that on the website. And now we're going to do the table, so you can put your notes for your concerns on Jeanette's big roll of paper yourself, and just make little notes, and she'll take that to the final design team.
We also took notes about what everybody says, so don't feel like you have to write if you already said it, because Adam is awesome and he's taking notes. But we're going to have 3 tables that have the same things on them. Okay, so there are going to be 2 pieces of paper on this table with the Sharpies, with me writing things, and then that's going to be the same on this one and on this one. So feel free to come up and put those up and have any discussion you like.
And I want to say thank you, everyone. This was a very productive meeting.